Hi everyone, Arinzeh here. I am a London-based buying agent and I love helping my clients find their perfect piece of London. I often work with many international buyers looking to buy in London, and there's so much we have to help them understand that makes the London and the UK unique. And one of them is the concept of leasehold versus freehold. Definitely not a concept I was familiar with in the US, where if you buy a property, you kind of own it, even if it is an apartment in a shared building. But here, the leasehold concept is definitely something you're going to want to make sure you understand before you buy. So let's start with the freehold. That's pretty straightforward. It's basically you own the entire building and the ground. And if you own, say, a single family house, you're going to own the freehold. So really not that confusing or complex. You will have complete control of the property. It's your responsibility to insure it, not insure it, look after it, not look after it. It all falls on you. Now, with the leasehold concept, this comes into play typically because you are going to be in a space sharing or a building where you share the space with others. Therefore, you're going to have a leasehold, which is basically a right to rent your property for a certain period of time. While you own the interior walls of your property, you don't own the land. That's reserved for the freeholder. The freeholder will own the land, and therefore you will have to pay typically what's called a ground rent for the right to lease that property, along with service charges, which should be the actual expense of running the building, and you're going to pay your pro rata share based on square footage. The third ownership structure that's definitely worth mentioning is probably the best sheet you can get when you own an apartment or a flat. It is a share of freehold. Here you'll still have an underlying lease which will dictate the terms of communal living or how you need to behave sharing space with others, but you will also own a share of the entity or the freehold entity that owns the building. In this arrangement, you'll have more control over the building's management as a share freeholder because they will be the ones making the decisions who to hire as a building manager and how to look after the property. And while there may be a lease with an underlying term, basically to extend it, it'll be a paper or legal exercise to extend it with not a significant cash outlay which you would incur in a traditional lease structure. In London, leases are very common. So you're definitely going to want to have to consider them if you want to look at the widest pool of available properties. London has the highest proportion of leasehold dwellings at 36%, which is the highest proportion throughout the UK. And in London, leasehold properties account for about half the property sales in London, according to the Freehold Collective. Almost all flats in London are sold on a leasehold basis compared to 7% of houses. I guess that's where the numbers get a bit skewed. Now, leasehold versus freehold. In 2023, the average freehold property in the UK commanded a price tag of £300,000, which is 42% more than the average leasehold property. There can be several complexities when it comes to purchasing a home that has a leasehold property rather than a freehold. As I mentioned, there'll be the issue of the length of the lease, so you always want to confirm the remaining lease outstanding. A lease below 80 years can be problematic, affecting the mortgage eligibility and therefore the price. Many lenders will not lend on a property with less than an 80-year lease, so you definitely want to make sure you're comfortable with the remaining lease terms. And for my buyers, I typically like to say anything between 80 and 90, we should definitely be concerned because you're likely going to have to be the one to make the cost expense of extending the lease. There's also the service charges and ground rent that you're going to have to pay. As I mentioned, the service charges should be the actual expense associated with managing the property, whether it's communal areas, roof, building insurance, those types of things. However, in the news, there's definitely been some highlights of leaseholders who have been raked over in terms of the amount of service charges they've had to pay over time. In one case, there was even a report of 20,000 fees for unclear maintenance charges. Following that news article, there have been several issues that have been brought to the forefront when it comes to leasehold properties in London. There's been unjustified charges, as I've mentioned. There's been a lack of transparency sometimes, where in this case, leaseholders are sometimes not able to get a clear breakdown of costs, which leads to frustration and financial strain. Or also issues with the management companies, who are sometimes appointed by the freeholders of the land, and these companies may charge fees for their services that are unclear or even non-existent. There's definitely some hope for leaseholders though, because the government is planning reforms to increase transparency and give leaseholders more control. The key initiatives include removing the 2-year rule to extend leases or buy freeholds upon purchase. Also about simplifying the right to manage provisions where leaseholders can take over the building management. They're also planning to introduce a leasehold and common hold reform bill. Navigating these complexities can be daunting, but that's where a buying agent such as myself can come in. Here's how I can help. Definitely on the due diligence side, I'll ensure that the lease length, annual fees, and any additional costs upfront are clear and make sense. Also, from a negotiation perspective, we definitely want to make sure that the lease factors into the overall value we see for that property and is reflected in the purchase price. I'll also make sure that you're connected with the best referral partners to make sure when it comes to the conveyancing and due diligence process, we're clear on the lease terms that are going to impact you as a leaseholder. Some quick tips for buyers is to always make sure you read the lease thoroughly. There's provisions like things like whether pets are even permitted, or could be issues on soundproofing to make sure you have carpet or other suitable soundproofing if you have an apartment that's above someone else. You also want to make sure you're clear on the building's finances and how the building has been run over the years. You can also consult with other leaseholders to get a sense of potential upcoming costs and issues. Ultimately, the keys are control and what the service charges are covering for the building. Depending on the amenities, the service charges could also include various things such as, say, concierge, gym, spa, recreational space, communal gardens, and amenities such as that. So you want to make sure you're comparing apples to apples when service charges of one building compared to another. I hope this video has been helpful for you. Knowing the difference of a share of freehold, leasehold, and freehold are definitely critical factors when it comes time to purchasing a home in the UK. If you have any questions or comments, make sure to leave me a comment in the section below, or you can book a free consultation. You can always reach me on WhatsApp on +44 770 318 3750. I look forward to chatting with you, and make sure to hit that like button and hit subscribe if it's your first time visiting. I'll see you on the next video. Bye for now. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button, and if it's your first time on my channel, don't forget to subscribe to make sure you don't miss a single episode as we put out weekly videos about the London property market and living in this incredible city.